much. And I want to kind of go into our conversation with Michael, begin with you, if I could. You know, the garbage can, semantics, but this goes back with the former president to 2015, Michael. I mean, you know, when Mexicans come over, they're not sending their best, they're sending rapists, and then, you know, poisoning the blood of America. It's just, yeah. Michael, I guess that Trump believes this is effective and is positive for him. Who is this effective and positive for?
You just heard it. You just heard it. That young man, he talks like I talk with my friends. So now we know what his friends talk about. They see America as a trash can. They see America as a place where people who don't look like them belong. They see an America where it's dystopian, not because the man that they support and want to be president wants to be a dictator, but rather because the woman who's running is somehow a bigger threat because she's a female. So this whole pro-bro approach resonates because that young man just summed up why it appeals the way it appeals. It reminds me of what a young mother of two that I saw in a focus group in 2016 from New Hampshire. You know, she's, you know, mother of two, divorced, asked why she supported Donald Trump. Because he's just like me. So there's the arc. It's completed. He's just like me, and he talks like I talk with my friends. And so now we have a better understanding of why Donald Trump's ceiling is a winning ceiling for him, potentially at 47, 48%, because a significant portion of our country likes Trump because he's just like them, and he talks like they talk with their friends. And so it makes it harder then to figure out how to cut through to that. Because how do I get in between a conversation about a country looking forward in which you and me, Jose, are as much a part of this fabric as anyone else, right? At the same time, they think that you and me don't belong here.
Yeah, that's such a profoundly interesting way of putting it. Michael, I'm just wondering, Governor, you know, when the vast majority, I think, of impactful comments and conversations seem to have been carried out in this election cycle in podcasts, Governor, is it just a different way that people are communicating about issues, or under the epidermis issues as well? Is it that, or is it just simply that Trump is such a sui generis candidate in so many ways that he is reaching people in different ways?
Yeah, Jose, first, let's ground this. Recent polling had, for young people that are going to vote with Harris, with a 20-point lead, 56-36. And I think what Michael says about there's a ceiling there for sort of what Trump says is absolutely true, because young people and all people care about housing costs. They care about higher taxes or tax giveaways for the wealthy. Young people care about the environment. The Institute of Politics just did a poll where only 20% of young folks are actually confident that there'll be a peaceful transition for the election. So there are new ways to communicate to voters. But when you look at sort of the underlying fundamentals, with Vice President Harris in Texas talking about, will women have dominion over their own body? That, though a lot of discussion goes, the podcast, that's a ceiling. And where we're seeing, and Harris has been on a lot of those podcasts, as has Tim Walz, who, it's not a shtick, the coach, and that he's kind of everybody's dad. I think at the end of the day, that cuts through because it's not just talking about one issue. It's actually reaching out to folks and talking about issues that matter in their daily lives.
Michael, I was just wondering, one of the key aspects of every campaign is get out the vote, right? And how much you're able to organize the organization of people going out to vote. How do you see, Michael, that aspect playing a part in this election, which, as we're seeing, is different than any other election?
Well, I think it's a very important aspect of this election that is largely overlooked by the press, which is doing the horse race analysis and sort of, buying into the salted polling that certain Republican polling firms has sort of layered into the national polling to sort of to look like there's momentum for Trump. There's a loss of momentum for the vice president. But the governor and I both know, having been on the ballot, and certainly myself as a county and state and national chairman, that at the end of the day, if you ain't got no ground game, you got no game. It doesn't matter. And the RNC has no ground game. I was looking at some reports from some folks I know up in Pennsylvania area, and they were talking about the fact that right now the GOP doesn't have that strategy in place in some of these important areas, because why? Donald Trump, when he installed his daughter-in-law as the co-chair of the party and handpicked his chairman and told him, you will do as I need you to do, they eliminated a lot of the organizing effort that Ronna, the former chairman, had put in place. They eviscerated that programming. So they went into the fall and come into the fall with very little ground game infrastructure to get out that vote. So that's why Trump is relying on the ugly hyperbole and the nasty conversation to rile up a base that they're otherwise not organizing to turn out. So as we started this conversation about those young men, and all of this bro-beating chest stuff and all that, they got to turn them out. And trust me, an 18-year-old kid who just registered walks up to a polling place and sees a 6-hour line. You think he's going to stand in that line? 8-hour line? You got to train that voter to do that. And that's something the governor and I know is an essential asset for a campaign. I don't care if you're running for president or if you're running for sheriff. You got no ground game, you got no game.
Interesting. And Steve, I want your thoughts on this, because I'm understanding right now that the Washington Post is announcing that they will not be endorsing for the presidency of the United States of America. Just recently, the LA Times announced that they would not be endorsing anyone. There are other major newspapers around the country that have endorsed one candidate, mostly over the other. What do you think this means, and how much of an impact do these endorsements carry?
Yeah, Jose, I think that the endorsements are discussions on shows like ours with you and Michael and I. And it's sort of that on kind of the higher level. Yeah, it becomes part of the narrative. But as Michael says, look, elections are actually decided on the ground among people that their lives are too busy ultimately to care about, does the New York Times or the LA Times endorse? They're going to be caring about who's actually going to fight for my best interests to move me forward. And it's a whole lot of work over the next 10 days to make sure that voters get out and are actually voting on, politics does become local at the end of the day. Even though Trump tries to completely nationalize it all, it really is about individuals and getting them out to vote. And I think that's what we'll see. And whether the LA Times or the Washington Post decides to endorse doesn't make a lick of difference in this race.